skin color, the way we are mainly plant-driven diet, we have high cholesterol, and we live in a temperate zone. Temperate zone means bacteria, fungi, algae, and human being and all plants live together. Unlike a Western system where we undergo weather extreme changes of sterilization and regrowth, here everything grows throughout the year.
Even in the US, a lot of the longevity experts say that South Asians seem to have very different characteristics when they come to them with metabolic issues.
Supplement alone are not going to change the way we process our body.
Diets have caused havoc in the system, like paleo diets. We have seen users coming with paleo diets and have high cholesterol levels.
Hello, this is Prashanth Prakash, founding partner at Accel. Today, for the second episode, we have two very interesting guests. One, Dr. Deepak Saini, professor at the Indian Institute of Science, and Rajesh Reddy, an old friend who has been investing in longevity and has just started to scale up Serotonin, a longevity startup in the Valley. Welcome. Great to have you both of you here. So in this episode, we will discuss a topic that I think will have many layers and many interesting aspects to it, which is the central dogma of longevity, right? The genome versus the phenome. We know that genetics is where everything starts. We know that everything is downstream from there. But we also know that it's not just our genetics. There are many other factors which lead to our phenome, right? And phenome includes, the illnesses, the onset of our diseases, and many such factors. And there are many external factors in this journey from the genome to the phenome, which really influence our diet, our nutrition, our exercise, and everything in between. So, Deepak, as a scientist, it would be good to kind of give a little bit of under the hood understanding of how this thing that starts with the genome and really ends up with the phenome, and this impacts has a significant impact on our longevity.
Thank you, Prashant. I think it's a very interesting question. It's a debate rather than a question about genome to phenome conversion. Genome is something which we are born with. For a lay person, we are born with the genome, which pretty much stays stable for our entire life. Phenome is what changes on an everyday basis, what makes us as we are today. And the transition from the genome to phenome is, if you take any cell in a body, you pretty much have the same genome. But each cell is doing different stuff. The liver cell is different from heart, different from brain. That means while we have this 20-odd thousand genes, not every gene is there in every tissue, every cell type. So there is some sort of very fine regulation what expresses in different tissue types. And that pretty much says that because there's difference in expression.
So this expression is through RNA.
Expression is through RNA. So let's go back to when you say central dogma of longevity. In biology, when we say central dogma is just an information flow. DNA is the core, which is a matrix on which we read the information, which makes RNA, and RNA is what makes protein, which does all the stuff. Our proteins are like building blocks, functional blocks, activity blocks of our body. They do what our body needs to do. So they are enzymes which catalyze reactions.
Yeah, so there are a lot of enzymatic reactions
which make
that happen
metabolism
in our gut and every other place of our body.
Yes.
That takes us from this RNA expression, the metabolites, and then to the protein.
Yes. So it's very interesting that you mentioned that, the protein drives all the reactions from DNA to RNA to enzymes to metabolomes. They also something which are very transient in nature. The beauty of protein is, unlike our DNA, which is encoded when we are born, RNA can be made or destroyed. Proteins are very short turnaround time.
And what are the environmental and other external factors that really influence this chain?
Great. So when you say environmental factors, that's what we're talking about. What dictates my phenome? Right. How am I today? Am I inflamed today, right, or I'm satisfied tomorrow? It is dictated through changes in our DNA, which we call as epigenetic changes, which regulate how RNA is made. And then how RNA is made into protein. There are many layers of regulation there. And the best part is all these steps, which translates DNA to protein ultimately, have points where the environment plays a critical role, external and internal.
And I think epigenetics is one such aspect that's significantly influenced environmentally and with age. With age, right? And that's a whole other topic for maybe another day, Deepak. Rajesh, any thoughts around this, what you have seen in this influence from genome to phenome? Really, what are the steps that matter in between, and
I think just on the genetics itself, I think what we're looking at from a difference between the user groups between the US and India, for example, is, for example, the MTHFR gene. We see a lot more prevalent with users from India, of Indian origin, I would say, as much. And it is interesting, the implication of that on the methylation process, increased homocysteine, and then combined with, why do you see much more B9, B12 deficiencies in Indian people? I mean, it's just like literally, if you look at it, and then the US system is also fortified foods with folate. And so a combination of factors, you see much lesser impact on homocysteine levels, for example, in certain populations. I'm talking about the more of the user groups that we look at from a slightly more affluent and educated people. So I'm sure that varies as you go to different populations, but that's an example. Same with vitamin D, the VDR gene, how you see that. I mean, we know very well the Indian origin people have a deficiency of vitamin D. And then if you look at fat metabolism like FADS1, FADS2, those genes too, we're seeing these things actually have implications in deficiencies on our user groups, and that manifests.
And this starts becoming very important, Rajesh, because based on your genetic abilities to handle these various nutrients and micronutrients, phytonutrients, when we talk supplements, when we talk any of these ingestions, it has to be appropriate to your genetics. Rajesh, this link between the genome and the phenome, right? Where have you seen it play out in your own experience, and especially when it comes to the US population, and contrast that a little bit with what understanding you may have or have not on the Indian population?
I'll give 3 examples, which are, I think, of significant importance. There is, I think everyone knows about vitamin B9 or folate deficiency, which impacts cognitive health, cardiovascular health, many things.
And I think Indians have a significant
folate deficiency, and that has a high impact on aging and mortality in many ways. Similarly, the impact on vitamin D, it's well known that we have, and we have a gene that actually drives that.
I think this gene, I think what I just wanted to maybe highlight here is based on the gene, either you're a poor metabolizer or a hyper metabolizer. So what that means is that what could be your dosage, right? Do you have to take 1,000 units, 5,000 units? So which we typically miss out when we look at. So there is a role that genetics plays in how these nutrients and
how much of the nutrient you need and how your body uses them up. Right. Similarly for fatty acids, it's a major topic, and then our body's absorption of how it converts to the right. I don't want to use any technical word here. Sorry, and that has implications in terms of our body's requirement for omegas, high quality omegas. And so those are 3 things that we see highly different for Indian origin people compared to the West.
Deepak, any specific these kinds of genetic predispositions we have as a group in India? And what would you highlight as like 2, 3 major ones?
So a lot, something which Rajesh dwelled upon, vitamin deficiency. Now, we have genes which actually says we have high cholesterol. We make a lot of cholesterol in our body. He talks about fatty acids and he talks about vitamin. So if you think from a very nutrient perspective, any change in the metabolic play will also change the bioavailability of the molecule.
Yes.
If my high cholesterol is sequestering vitamin D, my vitamin D in my measurements is low, but I may have sufficient vitamin D. We have a different skin tone. We are darker, and our vitamin D productions are different. Requirements are different because of skin tone being different. So there's a very interesting thing. So while we talk about genome being a driver, because our phenome is different, the benchmarks of low and high between West and India needs to be
So
revisited.
things like your skin color and all that you could put into this bucket
Absolutely.
of
Skin
phenome.
color, the way we are mainly plant-driven diet, we have high cholesterol, and we live in a temperate zone. Temperate zone means bacteria, fungi, algae, and human being and all plants live together. Unlike a Western system where we undergo weather extreme changes of sterilization and regrowth, here everything grows throughout the year, which include my bacteria. So that means my requirement of my gut, my body, my micronutrients which are provided by the gut is going to be different from the West, where a lot has to come as supplements, but my gut can provide a lot of them naturally. So there is a genetic factor which allows those things to stay in Indian population, which is different from the West.
So when we go from the genome to the phenome, we know that most of the pathways somewhere are related to our metabolism, right? A significant portion of them, right? So in that context, and specifically looking at the Indian phenotype and what we seem to have got ourselves into, with maybe that shift in our diets, messing our food matrix, messing with our moderation. Is there, and this I've heard from multiple people that even in the US, a lot of the longevity experts say that South Asians seem to have very different characteristics when they come to them with metabolic issues, right? So what do you think is our genetic predisposition there in terms of being able to handle these new diets and these transitions in our lifestyle?
So if you look at Indian system, one thing which we dwelled upon previously was the Indians are very societally ingrained culture. I think there's no other country in the world which has got this many festivals as Indians have. Right. We like to celebrate life. But at the same time, there's no other country where the fasting is as ingrained culturally as India. Right. That means we appreciate the abundance, but we also practice moderation. We also, and that is, if you think about it very carefully, it is all linked to metabolism. So we go through this cycle, which has become very popular now, intermittent fasting, fasting without a reason. We Indians gave enough reason for everybody to fast.
So just to clarify here, Deepak, I mean for the audience, time-restricted eating is different, intermittent fasting is different. Time-restricted eating is when you eat in a particular window, right? And intermittent fasting is when you have slightly extended, prolonged periods of fasting, 24 hours, and in our culture, I think not eating for a whole day, just water fasts, and sometimes even 2-3 days, I think is common. No, just clarifying.
No, so that's perfectly, I mean, you set up a context very well. So I think going for this preamble, which you've said about fasting, which is culturally ingrained, right. I think metabolism not only regulates how our body functions, metabolism also regulates how our genes express. So while we have this DNA which says all genes are same between a Western and an Indian per person, but not all genes are expressed at the same level.
And why is that?
That's what I say. So there is sugar feeding into how the genes express. A lack of sugar regulates how the genes express and make different.
And this is at the level of the epigenetics?
This is completely epigenetic, purely epigenetic way of regulation. When we say epigenetic is how environment regulate us, right. The genes in our body to express what is going to be functionally efficient in our body. So Indians' gene set is largely driven towards efficient utilization of low resource setting. Right. And that was very, very different from the West. We have gone through cycles of flood, famine, abundance. And that changes how our genes have learned to adapt to those conditions. So if we start giving our genes a lot of calories, which is what has happened now because of abundance and in calories, there's going to be a lot of metabolic associated disorders, because you're suddenly feeding an engine which is technically, on a lighter note, a 60cc engine, and you're feeding an high grade gasoline, it's not going to run really good.
Switching gears a bit on, the genetic predisposition in supercentenarians, right? Are there specific genes in the US that they have now uncovered? I think there have been lots of studies on centenarians in the US. In the US, have there been studies which have shown specific links to this longevity genes in supercentenarians?
There's been one gene.
Professor Saini would be the expert.
I think there is one gene which has been shown in a study to have a positive correlation. Right. But when you say correlation, that means that people who have lived longer, healthier, they seem to have certain gene expression more. But there's no absolute black and white in this story. It's actually a very colorful story. It's more of an Alamara of India. Right. We're in the first color movie. But it's going to get more colorful because we have not found associations at the genetic level for most places. We've always found non-genetic associations for longevity.
Do you believe that if we did a study in India on our centenarians, we might find a different gene?
I think the best part of studying biology is we know so little. And when I teach my students, I tell them, never say never in biology, because there's always exceptions to this rule. So yes, if we do deep enough study, we cover enough centenarians, we might be, up for a surprise. And maybe there is not a gene for long living, but there could be a gene for resilience, gene for frailty, genetic predisposition, what keeps old people more fitter. I mean, we are prepared for all surprises.
Great. So Rajesh, let's look at the other key factor, which is supplements, nutrition. Now, I know that we have also gone from a food system that was reasonably clean, a few decades ago, to a very polluted and corrupted food chain. We have also, I think, gone to this other extreme of just thinking that everything as a supplement fix, right? So you don't need to do anything with food, but you can just take all the supplements in the world and you'll be fine. And 60, 70 is not uncommon with a few folks in the US, and you know what the names are. What is that kind of right, mix of the food metrics being important, because ultimately nutrients in the food metrics make a very different effect in terms of bioabsorption and bioavailability. And what is the right time to take a supplement, and how do you recommend that in the serotonin system, for example?
It's a very a topic of great passionate views on this, because we've watched this over the last 8 years of pilots on users about how the individual bodies with what combinations gave the best results. And I think the first misnomer is that categorizing them into completely opposite camps is probably wrong, because supplements are considered food. And it's especially more and more of the way they're formulated today is trying to mimic more of the way the body responds to food. And except that they would be in higher concentration and have, specific formulations to impact some specific markers in many cases. But what we found is that there are obvious ones, the big ones, and that most people are deficient, if you look at it from India point of view. The vitamin D, as we know. Again, I want to caution everybody that when we talk about these, this is not something that people should recklessly dabble in. There needs to be a scientific basis and guidance on how you approach these, but we'll come to that later. But just vitamin D levels, getting them to optimal, it's a big one. B12s, especially from a methylation point of view, the right kind of B12 formulations, that's a huge one. Then magnesium is like we assume that foods have magnesium with it, and our soil is depleted of magnesium, and it's a hugely depleted. Like if we just, I think the current thumb rule is that we get less than 1/8 of magnesium our grandparents got from food, because soils have been completely depleted with the way they've been treated with planting industrial agriculture. So these are all massive building blocks. And so we need that. Then comes the anti-inflammatories and antioxidants and omegas. All of these make up the foundation. And these are powerful complements to a dietary, full balanced diet. And they need to be treated that way. And I think the combination.
So how do you kind of determine when, like take antioxidants, right, and phytonutrients. If you eat a healthy diet with the right legumes and the right fruits, berries and so on, you ideally should be able to get the right amount of phytonutrients.
I think yes. I think so. It depends on what the goal is. If the goal is to create optimization of your body, which I think having all these niggling issues, which are because of your lifestyle, because of other factors, and diet compromises that we make, etc., are starting to drag your body into potential like a long-term diseased situation. And to avoid that, we need to really offset it, and basically take on the issues that cause those deficiencies or require higher antioxidant needs for the body is a result of modern lifestyle. Pollution, for example, creates a huge amount of stress on the body, or stress itself. And so these are things that are modern day challenges. And so we need to offset them with more thoughtful interventions, and just not assume that we can continue to live the way we did in the past and that will take care of it. So the answer is, it's not an either or, it's a combination with a very healthy balanced diet. Phytonutrients is another important topic. We talk about rainbow bowls, Mediterranean diet. Yeah. It's always about the colorful vegetables, and those are very important for your phytonutrients, and you can't miss that and then try to supplement it alone. So those are key foundational elements. Fiber is a big topic that people suddenly have moved to starchy foods and then high protein, and the need for fiber becomes more important than ever. So those are things that you need to come through food, and then the specific nutrients and antioxidants and anti-inflammatories to boost it. And it's really a much more scientific process. And I think we look at our cars as sophisticated today, and we spend a lot of pride in having your cars tuned by computers and engines. And we need to also look at our bodies that way. What is missing? How do we optimize our bodies?
Deepak, talking of this, these kind of more tricky areas, like antioxidants and, measuring your inflammation and being able to titrate that, being able to understand also, things like lipid metabolism and how to kind of then incorporate either supplements or changes in the diet. What is your perception in terms of how in India we are today addressing these, or have views on how to do it?
The supplementation business.
The supplementation business in India. How are you seeing that evolve?
Before we come to the Indian context, so I will actually continue with Rajesh mentioned about supplement industry per se, and more so industry from a human perspective, from a body perspective. Now, what are supplements? When we say supplements, we talk about vitamins, micronutrients, macronutrients, minerals, ions. Our body need them to run it at the optimal levels. That's the way it is. So when it's optimal level, let's say imagine a car running on a highway, and the purpose is to go faster. You will actually switch your gasoline from a higher to different grade. But in a city with the new hybrid ones, you shift it to electric motor. So the purpose is what you're burning in that machine to keep it running at most efficient, no knocking, as smooth ride as we want. So the smooth ride is the question which we're asking about longevity. Yeah. Healthspan is equivalent to smooth ride. And if a country like India suddenly shifts without upgrading their infrastructure, which is their vehicle, which is compliant to high-grade gasoline, is going to cause all kind of knocking in the body. So while we have the same physiological setup, we suddenly have high calories available to us. So the engines are old, but we are giving high-grade gasoline.
Or we have got the engines to a state of dysfunction.
State of dysfunction, exactly. So engines have gotten old because we're just not using
it. Supplements are really not going to make a difference in
supplements
that situation.
Are not good. So supplement alone are not going to change the way we process our body. So what we need is a balance of what we take in to run our engine, plus all the add-ons which make them run optimally. A balance is what's required.
Deepak, one is a balance, and really there's a pyramid here, right? You got to fix the things on the top. Supplementation comes
alone
later,
is not
right?
going
It
to
comes
That's why it's
later.
called supplement.
Yeah, supplement. It's lower in the pyramid.
It's an
So unless you fix your diet and other lifestyle aspects and sleep and exercise, there's no supplement in this world that's
which is going to
help
make you. So there's no pill to this longevity, and especially in India, the affluence has been very sudden. The gradual transition has, we have still a lot of information percolates from the West, where all the initial, debates have been addressed. So what we have trying to do is we want to capture the goods of the West without fixing what is not working for us here first. So we want everything good, but we don't want to fix what's not working.
See, Deepak, also we have had a very, casual approach to medication in India. So when we have had such an approach to medication, you can imagine the approach we'll have to supplementation, right? So it's
You're absolutely right. I mean, India is one country where we take pride on being fatalistic. We take everything, ye to hoga, dekha jayega. The word that dekha jayega means we will see, we shall see is very Indian concept, because that shows that we don't want to be prepared for tomorrow. And in aging or longevity, we have to be prepared for tomorrow.
And Deepak, the other big problem, Rajesh, I've seen in India is this short-term thinking, right? Seems to, that quick fix approach is actually an antithesis to this whole way in which we need to very carefully address this path to better health span, right?
It comes to the root of the human behavior, right? So the instant gratification.
Yes.
The entire system, all systems are gaming that. So it's almost like designed for your food ordering app, makes food look good, and you're going to hit the button. You're gaming the behavior. You're playing to that. So everything that plays to that behavior, I think, is really how the industry's evolved. Across the world, it's a lot more that we're seeing now in India. I think that's going to be a serious challenge for us to get the good out of it. But the instant gratification behavior is deeply ingrained in human behavior.
So one of the things in Longevity India, Deepak, I guess you guys have a real, task at hand, is to have this guidance for people on this being a slightly, having no quick fix, right? So this being a very thought through approach that one has to build for themselves to be able to, increase their health span.
I mean, thanks for asking, Prashanth. Yes, we have actually, I should not say longevity, and I think the task is cut out for all of us. That to bring the aspect that if we are here for long, we need to start making large changes.
Large changes and thought through changes.
And which we follow through. Yes. I cannot just wake up tomorrow, today is my fasting day, and next day I go binging. But at the same time, as you rightly mentioned about gratification, whatever is pro longevity is not gratifying. It's going to be a very boring ride if you want to talk about. So, and if you talk about from that perspective, any extremes of sort is what is not going to be desirable. This whole attitude of, binge today, sleep short, we'll catch up or sleep over the weekend. So supplement is not going to be a solution for longevity. Supplement has to be entwined very nicely with a mental change, a lifestyle change. So people who have actually woken up to aging, especially in India, and I consider you as one good example for that they have agreed to make multiple changes in the system. They're not just relying on supplements to make them fit. They have agreed, they have decided that I have to make A, B, C, D changes. So it's a holistic reprogramming, which is what you're doing.
So maybe for the audience, let's summarize. Yeah, Rajesh, Deepak, we have discussed a lot, right? I just wanted to kind of put it into some context for the audience. So this is almost like what we are saying is a pyramid. So at the top, you have everything linked to your lifestyle and what you should be doing anyways, right? So there's no substitute for that. Good exercise, sleep, diet, all of those. And then there are going to be areas where you will need some help. And that's where supplements play a role, right? Then we have these situations where things may still require a fix, right? So there's this odd thing where you've done everything that you can through lifestyle and other interventions, but you still haven't solved. And all of us have this one or two things, right? We're very familiar with. Deepak, I wanted to kind of dwell into that topic of therapies, right? And how these therapies, if rightly used, appropriately targeted, right, can be useful. And maybe we can take a couple examples, and one that comes to mind is peptides. I think exosomes have been used significantly for skin and very well understood to at least externally, just like we spoke about looking good with our muscles. I think looking younger with these exosome therapies is a huge industry. But coming to some of the more organ-specific interventions, right, Deepak, whether it's stem cells or whether it is peptides, any of these. What's your view, and where are we in India? So maybe Rajesh, after that, you can opine a little bit on how US is adopting a lot of these much faster, and what has been some of the early results.
So I think, Prashanth, excellent point, but you put a very nice context to it, that if I fail to do the first round of fixation, which is my lifestyle, and I fail to address it using supplement, clearly I need intervention. Yes. And the intervention is, I would say, it's not necessary for everybody. Because if you actually go through this pyramid, you actually have addressed two aspects. You don't need intervention.
Yeah, like I said, Deepak, I've always seen there is some people, and for everybody, one odd
absolutely,
thing, right?
Absolutely. And I think this is where the most intervention market globally has always been, fixing what's not working out to be optimally or functional. If you have a genetic predisposition because of, let's say, as I said, you're born with genes, then you need intervention which will address to that either overactivity or underactivity in forms of intervention. So yes, the interventions are a necessary aspect if you really want to address a root cause which is driving the pathological change. And given there was just one thing which was mentioned to Rajesh, the recent Stanford study which says there are four fundamental ways aging can trigger in a body. It's either immune system, which is weakened immune system. There's a weak change in the hepatic or the liver system, kidney and the renal system, and the fourth is the metabolic system, they call it. The interesting part which was revealed that you can actually pretty much bundle people in the rate of aging in one of these four baskets. They're not mutually exclusive. They might be overlapping. But let's say there's an individual who has got a predominant liver accelerated aging feature, which is going to drive the systemic aging. You do have a value in intervening that pathological changes. So you can ask about what type of intervention, while there are molecules, small molecules, peptide.
All of these are in the realm of tissue repair, right?
Fundamentally. They should be in the realm of tissue repair, a targeted one.
Yeah, targeted.
They are the targeted therapeutic molecules, which, with the same simple goal from a clinical perspective, that there is an organ which is dysfunctional or poorly functional.
Or a muscle. Or a joint.
Muscle. Yeah. And so muscle is like one of the tissues for us. Correct. From a biological perspective, from head to toe, we are just a bunch of tissues put together. That needs intervention. And that targeted intervention is going to allow you to function optimally such that you can realize the first two goals. And that backward communication is absolutely necessary. So whether it's a stem cell intervention, whether it is targeted peptide, exosomes, all of them have value provided there's an underlying medical need to do that intervention. I think the point is there a need to do intervention? If there is a need, one must go for it. Coming from the Indian perspective, India has been championed as a pharma hub of the world because of our ability to manufacture things rapidly, scale it up rapidly, and also deploy them at a very rapid scale. Given that we have such extensive skill set available, we are going to become a hub of age and longevity associated interventions also. And I think given India is also rooted in the holistic healing design, I think we can set up a very fantastic template for checking up all the three boxes, which is lifestyle change, supplement, and intervention, we can be the major player in this domain.
And in the West, I think we've seen this one peptide, right, that everybody wants because it's a quick fix for their weight loss, Ozempic. But and that's what Deepak says is absolutely something we shouldn't start with, right? Yeah. But are there other better examples in the US where there is adoption and good efficacy on these treatments?
I think going back to how to look at these things. One was the point you made about the pyramid, the hierarchy, and how you go through this. But I think even in the top of the hierarchy, even in the base things like diet or exercise, you could overdo them or underdo them and cause as much damage to yourself. Right. So that when people think of these things as dangerous and you shouldn't go, you could do, bad behavior can start anywhere. And that's, I think, one of the things that when people discover the benefit.
Bad behavior with good intentions.
With good intentions. That more is not always better. Yes. And so it starts from there. And less is not better either. And so people either err on both ends of the spectrum. And that's a typical, I think, place that it's happened, that exercise, people overdo their exercise and cause themselves far more damage than probably even not exercising. But not exercising creates, is quite lethal as well. So how do you create optimal, which is between cardiovascular or strength and flexibility in exercise, for example? And that's one of the things that we have delved a lot into in the way we think about platforms and programs, is really about optimal. Yeah. And same with food. With diet, people can overdo. Diets have caused havoc in the system, like paleo diets. We have seen users coming with paleo diets and have, high cholesterol levels, and they have like all kinds of other problems, which initially wouldn't understand why are people like suddenly healthy people suddenly go off into becoming dangerous for themselves, and some of them had incidents that are very dangerous. So all of these are very dangerous behaviors, I think, and I think the real question here is you have to use every of these weapons with equal amount of care and thought and find the right optimal balance. And that's why scientific forums and places where the information is being shared in a more thoughtful way, as an example of this conversation, and it should help people start looking for right sources of information and follow right protocols. With that thought, if you come down now, similarly to supplementation, and it can do a lot of good, and we use it very effectively. And then comes to therapies. And so therapies now are exactly being demonized a lot, and for wrong reasons.
I think it started with the biohackers kind of using them willy-nilly.
Exactly.
Right. So I think
always the examples of the wrong use of it, because it's tempting to when we find something good, it's tempting to use it in a kind of excessive way.
Yeah, as a shortcut hack.
Exactly.
Right? And a lot of therapies, I feel, are actually solutions to things gone wrong on the first two stages.
In many cases. In some cases, it actually helps you, like hormone replacement therapy.
Yes.
Estrogen therapy. It's got huge goodness to it if it's used for the right reason. People don't need to suffer.
Yes.
The way they are, and the quantum of suffering by not having that intervention is actually not justified in the modern day with the demonization of it. But the problem exactly has been in the way it's been administered, and the fact that you're not taking the sequence of steps to get there. And I think all these three are being revolutionized now by finding what is the optimal and what combination should work. Yes. And I think that is the opportunity for the world right now.
I think I'll put in something very interesting here. It's like he's rightly mentioned that if you take a particular individual, when we talk about therapy, we must move from a generalized therapeutics to a personalized one, and that requires precision. Yes. And precision requires understanding of what has been done at step A, which is your lifestyle change, understanding what has been step 2, supplementation, and understanding at step 3 that, look, despite of these, there is still a gnawing problem and an aching knee which needs intervention. That's where the value of intervention will actually have maximum impact on the long-term value. So understanding this aspect is going to be absolutely critical.
So here, Deepak, the value of our traditional ancient systems, like take, for example, just like we spoke about diet and moderation and what was there before and how we kind of lost our way in the process. I think if you take something like yoga or any exercise that is very a compound exercise, right? It's a full body exercise. And for large parts and for most people, very, very adequate to keep them fit, but be sufficiently fit, right? And with some walking, and so you don't have to hit the gym. So what's your perception on how does one leverage this moderation also when it comes to exercise and fitness?
No, I think it's absolutely, you already captured the point that yoga can do wonders on that domain. I think muscle strength is one thing. Right. Second aspect is muscle memory. Yes. And third aspect is suppleness of the muscle.
Yeah, it is muscle strength, not bulking up, right? So if you do the right forms in yoga and the right asanas, you do get to improve your strength significantly.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because I think you think the larger the muscle is, the more sterically hindered it's going to be for your movement. And that steric hindrance is what is needed to not be there when you're getting old. You need suppleness, you need flexibility, you need dexterity, and you also need muscle to actually execute those functions.
And improve your range of motion. Right?
Improve your range of motion.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think we've looked at this quite deeply from empirical data. We looked at users, now that we can get the type of exercise from your wearable. It was interesting for us over the 5 years we ran pilots to see combinations between cardio only, cardio and strength, cardio, strength, flexibility, flexibility only. And what we have learned, and we looked at it from a point of view of phenotypic age specifically. And given the level of granularity of data you can get from your wearables nowadays, it's amazing that you can actually start applying this. And we did frequent tests on our phenotypic age markers, and we found currently, and we use this for most people, and we looked at our audience profile is 40 plus, so it's not for younger people. So clearly, wanted to be clear that it's for people 40 plus, and a majority of them are 50 plus range. The 3-2-1 is where we found a sweet spot. But there is 3 days of cardio, and when you say cardio, we're not asking for a long distance run, but it's a cardio that at least of 30 minutes, where you keep your minimum amount of zone 2. And you could do stairs, you could do anything in any form and fashion that people choose. 2 days of strength training, which could be functional floor exercises of any kind. And 1 day of flexibility at minimum. In fact, 2 days of flexibility gave a little better benefit because most people did flexibility before and after.
And was it mostly yoga?
Is yoga.
Yeah.
And we found that sweet spot. And we have a lot of data that we can share at some point. And so I think it varies, I guess, for people with other conditions, older people. There's various variations, but definitely I think one thing is clear, that it has to be some combination of these. And some forms of yoga do allow for some combination of these.
Yeah, exactly. So you can also mix and match in yoga to get the same combination effect from these. Deepak, what's happened with yoga where there's now enough of a global acceptance and there's enough studies and trials done on that, and there seems to be some level of acceptance everywhere, right? But if you go and look at what we have achieved with the same rigor and scientific basis for our Ayurvedic practices, they don't seem to match up, and we are still waiting on global data, and that global data will be on, going back to your favorite topic, is going to be on global genotypes, and what does that really mean for us?
I think the answer to your question is there in your question. I think that's the best part. So yes, we have not really interrogated Indian medical system, which is Ayurveda, in that depth and detail. And the answer to that is on what Rajesh said a few minutes back, the instant gratification culture. The small molecule inhibitors, drugs, they manifest their impact in a very short window. I have fever within 6 hours, I do see fever being reduced. I have a knee pain, I take medicine for 3 days, I do see relief there. Our Ayurvedic system is slow because the active ingredient component is low, and also because there is not a complete control in the market in terms of process optimization, raw material,
and personalization also.
And personalization. Personalization is still there to a bit extent.
But it's at a very gross level. I don't know if there is enough, again, I mean, my view, Deepak, I don't know if there is a good study that scientifically matches that personalization with.
It's not there because
yeah.
we have not done it. We have not done it simply because while Ayurveda or the concept of Indian medication system talks about holistic healing, which pretty much can cover all the aspects. Because when you talk about Ayurvedic real practitioners, while they give you a medication, they will also give you suggestions to fix your dietary changes. They actually give you an allowed and non-allowed list of drugs. They also give you other physiological changes one must make. That means a person was forced by our system of healing to look onto those changes also. But those changes are not easy to implement. And that's where a lot of our ancient healing systems have failed. The checklist of the modern medicine, relief, instant gratification, and also alleviation of symptoms. That does not make our systems poor, but it's simply because we have not done rigorous enough trials for that. If we use our modern scientific rationale to study ancient formulations, the part of giving a lot of ancient formulation grita form, which is a ghee form.
Yes,
There is a lipid soluble
yeah.
component to it. There is so much value to it, which we have still not understood that how it is working. So yes, modern pharmacology integrated with the ancient pharmacology of there is a fantastic synergy which can be found there. And I think that it's a time where we should invest into that and figure out what's going on. Right. Tools are there. Intent has to be generated.
So Deepak, more studies.
More studies.
Yes, and just 2 cents onto that is that I think what in a short experimentation in this category, what we found for users who have gone to Panchakarma, which is intensive treatments, and we have tested them before and after, again from a phenotypic aging point of view. And we found varying results for different categories of people who've been compromised and had health conditions. Benefited from the gut reset. Yes. The gut reset, Ayurveda speaks about the gut forever, before it became popular in the West.
Yes.
West talks about the gut mostly from the last 10 years point of view, but Ayurveda always spoke about the gut. And the gut reset protocols, I think, are very powerful there. And we found things that other interventions could not deliver. Gut reset did the trick, and for a lot of cases in certain categories, including we've seen substantial reduction in RDW, which is like a hard parameter to improve generally. In the phenotypic aging markers. But I think the combination therapies, I think, is the answer, because each one takes a Puritan approach. You go there and they tell you, don't do anything else except this. Yes. And that's the problem. Everybody takes this one track about this is the therapy, because there's no that. And the moment we are able to mix and match therapies, I think we can open up huge opportunities here without.
So I think that's a good kind of segue to close this conversation. Just to summarize, of course, we spoke about the pyramid and the therapies and doing everything in the right order and at the appropriate time. But I think the last point, that a combination where you have an open mind. So I think the other big problem we have in this world of influencers and people giving their own central dogmas, right? Not whatever dogma that is understood by science. Leads to a situation where people are confused, right? So they then believe that just trusting one person and just going with that person is the most efficacious path, right? The reality is there is some value in everything, and I'm hoping that over time, platforms like yours and other clinics in India will provide choices for people to be able to have this very kind of multimodal, thought through, precision-based approaches. Thank you, Deepak. Thank you, Rajesh. In the third part of our series, we will cover the role of technology and how technology as a lever can be a great tool for a lot of the areas that we spoke about. So look forward to seeing you on the other side. Thank you.